Hey guys, Chris Moran here. We're going to continue the Sbx-2 build with the radio tray build here. This will be a little bit longer of a video just because there's so much little details in building the radio tray itself and making sure that it's built correctly. And make sure that there's not going to be any problems throughout the life of the vehicle. So just bear with me. There's quite a few tips I think you guys will find useful in this. So yeah, let's get to it. So first I'll just kind of go over the products that I'll be using for my radio tray. Obviously it's personal preference, how you like to do it, but first I like to use the xpert switch just because I've never had an issue with them, as well as how nice and clean it mounts in the radio tray. I really like that clean look. I always use WRC Sbx-2 servos. I like to use the reedy LiPo because of its size. The reedy is a little bit smaller than, like, say, the ProTech, so it allows you to be able to pad it into the box itself quite a bit more to protect it, whereas the ProTech's a lot tighter fit in the box. So I like to use the reedy for that reason. To secure the servos, I like to use the Avid carbon fiber servo spacers. They're required to be used under the servos on our radio tray. It does include, with the radio tray, it includes spacers. So if you don't want to purchase the expensive carbon fiber ones, it does include plastic ones. And then lastly, I like to use some sort of titanium servo screw. The ones I'll be using be from One Up Racing. And yeah, so that's the last of the products. Oh, and I'll be using some foam from RC Body Armor to pad the battery into its box and make sure it's well protected. They have multiple different thicknesses and sizes, so you'll be able to really cushion the battery really well to be well protected. So set everything aside, and first, before we dig into the actual radio tray itself, we are going to get the switch mounted up here. We'll open this up and we'll just pull out the actual switch mount here. This is the top plate for the receiver box. Clean off any excess flashing that's here. Also, it has it has this antenna mount right here. I don't like that. I don't use an antenna, so I'm going to cut that off. Just to make sure I have the cleanest look possible when I'm done. Cut off much of it as we can, and then I'll use the Dremel to just make it a flat edge there. Alright, and then now it's gone away. Just give us a nice flush surface there instead of that antenna mount that I'll never use. Next we're going to take and open up the switch here. So I like to mount the receiver plug in this channel right here that has a bolt-on cover. So we'll do what we need to do to mount that there, which you can see from the inside that it's this right here. This back portion is going to have to go away so that we can get that switch plug in there. So basically I'm just going to take and sand this whole back area away flush with this cover. Alright, now it should look something like this when you get it done. See how that whole back portion there has been removed. Make sure you clean up all the edges real nice. There's no sharp edges because your wires and stuff will be inside the box. So you want to make sure there's no sharp edges that's going to damage any wires or anything like that. Okay, once you get that done, you can see that the plug is able to fit in there and then be right out here on top, and it will set right in there like so. That. We'll worry about that here in a second. Now we need to make the modification to the actual top itself to mount the switch. So it comes with the marked area for where you need to switch. So you got the 2 holes. Those 2 holes are accurate for this switch. So we'll drill out those holes, and then we will actually use this shape here for the cutout we need to make for this to fit up through that hole there. So first thing we'll do is drill out those holes. Get a 2mm drill bit. Run through those holes. Cut off the lashing. Okay, you know, you got your 2 holes in there. Now we need to make the cutout in the center. So to do that, we'll be using our Dremel tool and probably go ahead and just start with a hole in the center here. This way, use a body reamer. And just put a big hole right in the center there. Okay. And then we'll get a rubber piece here that we're going to be using. See kind of what we need for size. You can tell that hole needs to be bigger. That's going to be right in the middle. And that looks good for the hole size. Now you can see that this is kind of egg shaped a little bit, or kind of diamond shaped. So basically we just need to take this hole and then stretch it out both ways to make this fit in there. Ideally it comes out to where it's as close to fitting as possible, so we don't have it looks factory. Check that for length. That looks good for the length. Now all we need to do is straighten out those lines a bit. Starting to kind of look like that shape now. So we'll go ahead and do a little test fit. And it's perfect. So tiny bit bigger than this, but it'll work. So now you got to do a little bit of trimming on this. As you can see, it don't quite fit in the edges here, so you got to kind of trim a little bit off this. So we'll go a little off this top edge here, and then also going to need to cut the corners off as well. Kind of going to need to do something like that. Test fit that. And then it fits down inside there. Good. So it should look like that. And then we're ready to mount the switch. Just go ahead and bolt that in. I don't like to use this little top cover that comes with it. You can, it's up to you. I don't like to use it. I think it looks cleaner without it, so I don't personally use it. But that's just personal choice there. So the switch will be very, very tight fit on this back edge right here. So make sure it goes down inside the cover, inside that back edge before you tighten it down. And then it should look just like this. Pretty tight fit. We ended up pretty good on that. And then got rid of the antenna mount there. So it's a nice clean look. Switch works nice and good. So the next little step here is I'm going to actually tie the receiver plug into a loop just to get rid of some of the excess there, and it'll allow me to lay that loop down beside the receiver like that. Pretty nice and clean once it's all together. And then I'm going to stick the receiver plug up through where I'm going to have it. Okay, so now then that's what the bottom look like. There'll be a loop. And then I like to have the wires on the receiver plug coming through to where they're closer to the switch. So there's going to be no wire on this side, on the front, and then on the back there will be where the two wires are. So then we need to continue on with mounting that plug into its place. Using some good old tire glue. How we're going to do that, so before we move forward, is we're going to actually plug in our battery, and this is going to give us our location on where I want that plug to be, because we're going to actually capture that plug using the top bolt-on deck to where this, when you bolt this down, you have it plugged in, this is going to actually lock that plug into place, so it can't come unplugged as long as this is in place. So I'm going to show you real quick how I do that. So basically, you see how it has this edge that comes down over? Well, that edge is meant to fully seal off the entire front. But now we're going to have two wires coming through there, but you also have this open side of the plug right here where there's no wire. That's where we're going to capture the plug, is on that open side right there. But we need to cut out an opening for these two wires to come through on this piece. So basically just going to take the Dremel and we'll grind a little section of that plate off, about half of this plate, and you make sure you do it on the correct side, because it's going to bolt in. Make sure you do it on the side that's going to be where the wires are at, and remove half of that. Again, there's wires coming through, so make sure you got a nice clean surface there. Okay, so it's going to look like that. You got about half of it remaining, and that's going to be what locks the plug into place. So now, to determine where we want to glue this plug down, basically we'll put this in here, with a cover on here. We're going to pull the plug back until it's tight against that, and then we'll carefully remove the cover, holding the wire into place. And then we're going to look where we got it and try to glue it in that spot as close as we possibly can. So it's just gonna have to try our best here. Put a little bit of glue on the surface of the plug. Doesn't take a crazy amount, in case you ever want to need to take it back off. So we'll put this plug back in real quick and make sure I put that in the right spot. And then I'll just kind of hold pressure down on that till the glue dries. And then it should look something like that without the cover on, and then with the cover on it'll look like this. And then your plug comes through the holes, and then that little bit that comes down locks your plug into place, so your plug can't wiggle, it can't work loose, it can't come unplugged, it can't do anything until you remove the screws that are in this cover that hold that top plate down. So go ahead and just unplug that. This seems to be stuck good and good to go. So that is it for the mounting the switch. So that section of the radio tray build is complete. So we can set that aside. And we'll move on to getting the servos and the battery mounted up here. So like I said, it does come with the spacers you need if you don't want to use the optional carbon fiber ones. Take some pliers and pop all these out. Okay, now we're going to need to take an X-Acto and clean all these edges up. Clean this upper here from the mold. I like to clean off any little burrs I see from the molding, just to make sure I got nice clean build when it's done. Alright. So now we got a nice clean, ready to use radio tray here. So the spacers it comes with, do a quick measure on those. I've never actually used those. They're actually 2 millimeters thick. So that'll work for pretty much any servo. Obviously different servos are going to be different size, heights and stuff. You may or may not need to use those, or you might need thicker ones, whatever. The ones I use for the WRC Sbx-2 servos is 1.5 millimeter thickness, or 2 millimeter would work also. Give you that little bit extra. So first thing I'm going to do is going to be mount up the battery. So you can see when I first put the battery in how much space it's got, side to side, front to back, and there's a lot of room up top where the cover would be, where it would move up and down. So we're going to get rid of all of that by using some RC body armor foam. First thing we're going to do is give it a nice cushion on the bottom surface. So we'll cut a piece to size for that. So once you get it cut to size, this is actually super awesome foam because it has adhesive back, so you can stick it into place. So give it a nice cushion floor to sit on there. Alright, so now then we're going to need to cushion the side movement here. Probably going to be able to put one side down one side, and it should be right how I need it. Sometimes you want to put it in there and check it before you stick it down. That way you know it's going to actually fit. That should be perfect. So I actually cut a long enough piece that it goes all the way down the side and wraps around the front as well, because the front's going to need quite a bit padding. So we'll just go ahead and stick this in there. Okay, and we'll see where we're at here. The idea is that your battery ends up fully 100% in foam and has the battery can't move in any way. That is the ultimate goal. Okay. So how it's got right here, it's kind of hex. I have some thicker foam that I'm going to put right there in the center of that hex area. That's going to make that straight across. Instead of that, that's because the battery is straight across. So I wanted to have a flat, straight surface, not that curved surface. We'll take this thicker foam called landing pad from WRC Body Armor. We'll cut it to that size for that middle area. We'll stick that in there. It's going to give your battery a nice bit of cushion there in the front for any head-on collisions or anything like that. I have a nice cushion there. And then on the back side, where it's got this bit here where your wire comes through, I'm going to cut a little piece that goes right there in the front of that area that'll take up that room for the battery to be able to come back. So it's going to be a little bit of foam just right there on that, spacing the battery out to here. So I'll also be using the thicker landing pad for that as well. Okay. Then I'm going to make one last tweak here, and right, where am I doing? Okay, right here, where there's nothing, where the wires are going to go in to this little cutout, I'm going to add a piece of foam right there to that side, and I'm going to do it just tiny bit taller than the actual cutout where the wires are going to lay over into that, and that's so that the wires are actually going to rest on the foam itself and not on the plastic. And that's just going to protect your wires over time. So it's going to be a nice skinny piece like this. And you don't want to go too much taller with it, just a tiny bit taller than the plastic. Because you need to have room for your wires to still be able to lay in the box. So just go a tiny bit taller than that plastic, and then you're good to go. And this piece is pretty fun to put on, honestly. So it's going to look, if it comes through, kind of like that. The wires are going to rest on the actual foam instead of the plastic. So then there's nothing to it except putting the wire down through the cutout there and dropping this in, but we do need to make a little notch right here for the balance plug to stick out of, because that's how I will be charging the battery. So we need to do that real quick. As soon as I figure out what I did with the little sanding drum that I needed for that. That's a bummer. There it is. Man, it's easy to get messy. So where I like to make the cutout for the balance plug is right here. About where my finger's at, it'll be right beside the cutout for the where the wire is for the battery. And it's gonna come right over here and be able to lay right on top of here. Alright, so there's nice, I don't know if it can come through there or not. There it is. Nice little cutout for that balance wire that will be basically laid right through there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and install the battery. We'll drop the wire down in there. And your battery should be pretty snug fit all the way around that foam, but it should fit nice and tight with foam pretty much on all ends except one side because there's not enough room, but it's tight in there and nice and cushioned. All of that good stuff. Just make sure that the foam is what's under the wires when you run the wires through that plug, that little cutout there. And then the wire's going to come out the bottom there, and I just take it up through the third cutout like so, and then that's what will be getting plugged into the top there. And then as far as the balance plug goes, there's nothing really to it, just however it really kind of lines up. I do like to have it flat, so I kind of twist the wires so it's sticking right out there flat. Then we can go ahead and put the top plate on the battery deck itself. And then it's all done. Okay, so there's your battery mount. Balance plugs right here. Receiver wire comes from underneath up through here, and this is fully cushioned receiver pack in there. So now we're ready to mount the servos. So we'll go ahead and open up a couple of these brand new WRC servos here. It does come with rubber grommets for the mounting of the servo, but I don't personally use those. I don't think they're necessary. These servos last forever, it seems like, not even using them, so I don't. To me, it just allows the servo to flex around a lot more and loses the precision of the servo. Alright, so we're going to get our servo spacers here. We'll need to get 4 of those. Alright, and then we need our servo screws. So right off the bat, I'm just going to get the servos started. Now the front 2 screws of each servo is pre-threaded into the radio tray, and the back 2 has this servo nut. So I'm going to go ahead and get the first 2 of each servo started, and I'll put the spacer underneath the servo. And I'll get the servos started here. Not tightening them down all the way. Just getting the servo kind of lined up and started in its place. When you buy the actual servo mounting screws, it aligns the servo perfectly centered because it has this little bit of raised edge that goes down between the servo ears and lines it all up straight. If you don't buy the servo screws, I recommend using a countersink screw, like a flathead. A regular flathead screw, not a button head or a cap head. The flathead screws are coned, so if you just use this screw and screw it down in, that cone will go down between the ears and kind of do the same thing as a servo screw would. So either one would work. Definitely a standard, just regular flathead screw would be the cheapest way to go on that. Okay, now we got our servo started in place. Now we're going to go ahead and get to the part that's a huge pain. That's getting these plastic nuts started into place. So, get it kind of put into its place here. We'll get our 1.5 shim under here. Go ahead and get our servo screws out. But we need to hold it down, and then you're gonna need something from the bottom side to basically kind of line the servo nut up and hold it into place. So basically I use a 1.5 hex driver up from the bottom to hold that. And try to line it up, which I'm not doing a very good job. A lot of stuff to try to line up all at the same time. Alright, luckily I got that one started. So, go ahead and get the other one in here and get it started. So apparently I'm clueless and I got the wrong length of screws because I'm having a heck of a time. With this. This is definitely not the fun part of building a radio trim. I'll tell you that right now. This is gonna be the death of me. Alright, I give up. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and move on. That way I don't take up 20 minutes of the video trying to get those stupid nuts on there. So, the steering servo linkage, or the servo lead, I don't know why I said linkage, needs to run up beside the throttle servo, so we'll put the throttle servo linkage lead in first, and then this steering linkage goes between those two and then lays directly beside the throttle servo itself and lays just up in there just like that. And it fits pretty snug in there, but that's how you have to have it to protect it from the spur gear. And it runs up in there. Just like that. It should look just like this when done. So it's 100% clean. None of the wires can move around. And then the wires come up through here. So, as far as the receiver mounting goes, I won't be doing that on the video because I don't have my new receiver yet. I'll be putting a new receiver in this, so I won't be putting that on the video. But I don't do anything special. I just use some double-sided tape on the bottom of the receiver, stick it down to the bottom, and then make sure I put all my wires nice and clean around it, packed in there to where nothing's getting pinched. And then as far as the personal transponder goes, personal transponder actually goes in this little cutout right here. There's a nice little, pull this out of the way, a nice little spot right on the outside of the tray where the transponder fits right down in there. And then it has a cutout already here. You see that little notch right there? That is for the wire to come straight in. And then when the top plate's bolted on, there's no play in that wire at all. I do use a tiny bit of double-sided tape on this bottom flat edge to stick the transponder down, just to be safe. But when that wire is in there tight and the lid's on, the transponder can't move because the wire is holding it in place. But I do use a tiny bit of double-sided tape down there at the bottom. Okay, so other than that, just put your top plate on and bolt it down. And I will say that, like I showed you earlier, when you got this plugged in, and then you put the top plate on, you got a nice clean top with the wires nice and clean. The wire can't come unplugged. And you have what I consider the perfectly built bulletproof radio tray, and you should never have any kind of issues or anything like that out of it. So yeah, so hopefully there was some useful tips in here for you guys, and thanks for watching, and we will be back for the next one, continuing the build. So like and subscribe. See you in the next one.